What's up, nerds? I'm Kendrick, your not-so-friendly neighborhood otaku, and welcome to my channel where I talk all things anime, manga, manhwa, and webcomics. If that's the type of thing you're into, then subscribe because I'll put one video out every Thursday to Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 2 to 3 shorts of anime commentary out every Monday to Wednesday, also at 1 p.m. Today, I'm going to be talking about all of the series I read in 2023 that I either ended up completing or dropping. Now, in 2023, there's a total of 31 series that fall into one of those two categories, including their spin-off series, and I'm only going to be talking about things I read via physical volume, webtoon, and tapas. I'm only including those three sources because I don't name websites. That is how they get taken down, and those are the three official sources that I read things on that ended up being completed or dropped. I usually also include things from Viz Manga, Shonen Jump, Kindle, etc., but none of those series were completed this year. Now, if we take a look at the percent of reads I had by type being digital versus physical, you can see that I read about 3.5% of things physically this year compared to the 96.5% of things digitally. Again, we're only looking at series that were completed or dropped, so if we switch this out for the percent of those reads that I completed versus dropped, we'll see that I completed about 80.6% of those series compared to the 19.4% that I dropped. I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I'm going to break this down even further to show you the number of series I read by each of the sources again being physical, webtoon, and tapas. Out of the 31 series that I either completed or dropped in 2023, I read 3 of those series via physical volumes, 20 via webtoon, and 8 via tapas. I also like to take a look at the rating that I gave each of these sources to make sure I don't have any outliers. So in this graph here, we see that the bars are the average rating compared to the line, which is the median. As you can see, I stay pretty true to my own rating system and there are no major outliers. Out of the physical volumes I read this year that were completed or dropped, they had an average rating of 8.2. Out of the webtoon series that I read that were either completed or dropped, they had an average rating of 7.59. And out of the tapas series I read this year that I either completed or dropped, they had an average rating of 7.85. Now again, I'm not going to go too into detail for series that I already posted a video on that I completed from the first half of this year. I'm just going to give you some highlights for them, but for the series I haven't talked about yet, I will go more in depth, obviously telling you more about the plotline and any trigger warnings you should keep in mind before starting these series. So let's get into the things I read in 2023 that I either completed or ended up dropping. Starting off with the series on webtoon that I completed, the first series I'm going to be talking about is called Another Love. I personally gave the series an 8.2 out of 10 and it's completed at 55 chapters. If you want to know more about my rating system, I'll post it in the comments below so you have an idea of what I'm talking about when I say an 8 versus a 7. Another Love is a romance drama psychological series heavy on that psychological element. This series involves a chance meeting between the FL and the ML when they are on vacation, and a revenge subplot against the FL's abusive and psychopathic ex-boyfriend. I can't really call him an ex-boyfriend because he more so took her captive, and there are trigger warnings in this series for sexual assault, rape, and domestic violence. If you are okay with the psychological element and those trigger warnings, I do highly recommend people check this out. I thought it was a really well executed series, and the art is pretty good too. Up next, another series I completed on webtoon is called Date First, Love Later. I gave this series a 7.6 out of 10 and it's completed at 91 chapters. This is a romance drama series in a college setting, so it does have some coming of age elements as well. This series follows the trope of a fake relationship turned into a real relationship. And the reason that they got into a fake relationship is for trigger warning for sexual harassment, sexual assault, and stalking. The FL was being harassed and stalked and wanted to get him off of her back, so she ended up getting into a fake relationship, and from there, what you expect to happen happens. I covered this in my earlier video talking about the series I completed in the first half of the year, so if you want to learn a little bit more about the plot, I suggest going back and checking out that video. Another series on webtoon that I completed is Daytime Star, which I gave a 9.8 out of 10. This series is completed at 92 chapters with a 5-chapter spin-off. This is a romance drama series in a show business setting, so our FL goes from no name to fame. This series also includes a shitty ex-boyfriend that the FL is trying to dodge, but they both work in the entertainment industry, so it's a little bit hard and they end up bumping into each other and working with each other at times. Our main couple though is so pure, so wholesome, so good. I highly recommend checking this out if you haven't already, and the art for the series is amazing. Up next, another series on webtoon that I completed in 2023 is called My Irresistible Ex. I'm giving this series a 7.6 out of 10 and it is completed at 100 chapters. This is also a romance and drama series in a show business setting, but if you were going to pick only one of those series to read between My Irresistible Ex and Date Daytime Star, I would recommend checking out Daytime Star. This series includes a second chance romance between the ML and the FL. They were previously together but were forced apart due to family drama and both being in the limelight of the entertainment industry, and then ended up coming back together. This series has a trigger warning for stalking and what I would consider more emotional or psychological abuse. The emotional psychological abuse element of this is due to the fact that cameras are planted in the FL's home to keep tabs on her, and just her whole family's vibe. Another series that I completed in 2023 on Webtoons is titled Romantic Flow. I gave this series an 8.4 out of 10 and it's completed at 50 chapters. This is a romance drama series in an office place setting, but not like sales or marketing, they're both lawyers. This series involves a revenge plot. Although the ML and FL aren't enemies to lovers, the ML is enemies with the FL's father and is trying to use her to get back at her dad. The reason he's trying to get back at her dad is because there is a murder subplot in this stories, and it is the murder of a child, so if that is not something you want to read about, I would suggest skipping this series. Up next, we have Sixth Sense Kiss, which I gave an 8.6 out of 10. This series is complete at 86 chapters with an 11 chapter spin-off, but I liked the main series better than the spin-off, so I would recommend just skipping over those completely unless you want to see their child. This is a romance drama supernatural series that takes place in an office setting. This series also includes the murder subplot, and while it's not the murder of a child, it does take place in front of a child. That is actually how the FL and ML's supernatural abilities come about, which means in this series we're also getting the trope of forgotten childhood friends. Another series I completed in 2023 on Webtoons is There Must Be Happy Endings. I gave this series a 7.8 out of 10 and it's completed at 109 chapters. This is a romance drama series with a time travel / second chance element to it. This series includes a contract marriage going from a fake relationship to a real relationship, and I want to give trigger warnings for child abuse and bullying. Up next on Webtoon, another series I completed in 2023 is the True Beauty spin-off. I completed the main story for True Beauty in 2022, which is why I'm not including it in my 2023 summary. I gave the spin-off a 7.8 out of 10 and it was completed at 33 chapters. This is a romance comedy coming of age story that includes a friends to lovers trope. This series also deals with the FL self-esteem issue as we look at her social media persona versus how she looks and is treated in real life. And for this series, I want to give a trigger warning for bullying. Now moving on to series on Webtoons that I completed but that I haven't talked about yet. Up first, we have Sierra. I gave Sierra an 8.5 out of 10 and it was completed at 66 chapters. This is a historical ro-fan series with a second chance and time travel element. In the series, the FL and ML were together and loved each other, but the FL was already set to be engaged and married to someone else. The FL and ML found refuge in each other because they both had a background of illegitimacy and were looked down upon by others in their family and in society. In the original series, the FL does get engaged to the man that she was originally set to be married to, and it is a toxic relationship that ends up leading to the destruction and doom of the kingdom at our ML's hand, who then takes his life in front of the FL, giving her the key to go back in time and have a fresh start. When the FL goes back in time, she and the ML have already had an intimate engagement with each other, so she runs away trying to separate herself from the future that took place originally. And that intimate interaction ends up giving us the runaway pregnancy trope. But the ML is not going to give up, and he ends up tracking her down after a couple of years, where he runs into her and her now, I'd say, like 5-year-old daughter. They end up getting back together, and the key that he gave her to go back in time actually makes her the key to solving specific things that happen later on in the plot. The man who is originally set to marry our FL has a sort of obsession with her, but not because he loves her, but because he wants her and he sees her as a possession. The FL uses the key that the ML gave her to go back in time to resolve that issue and bring peace back to the kingdom. Up next on Webtoon, another series that I completed in 2023 is titled Marry My Husband. I gave this series an 8 out of 10 and it's completed at 58 chapters with a 10 chapter spin-off. This is a romance drama series that also includes a time travel element. The FL has a shitty ex-boyfriend / husband that I want to give trigger warnings for domestic violence and abuse for, because in the original timeline, the FL finds her husband cheating on her with her best friend. Now, I also want to point out that our FL in the original timeline was a cancer patient with late stage cancer, so when she sees this, her body's already in a weakened state and her husband attacks her, which leads to her dying in the original timeline. When she comes back, she plots revenge to get her best friend to marry her husband so that they can be separated from her and she can go on to lead a happy and healthy life. As she's planning this revenge, the FL finds our ML, who has been in love with her the entire time but never acted upon it because she had previously been in a relationship and then a marriage. Our ML ends up being a major support system for her, and for any of you who were worried, her revenge does come to fruition, and it is very cathartic. For this series, I do recommend reading these spin-off chapters because you get to see their children, and they're just all so precious. And the last series that I completed on Webtoon in 2023 is titled My Far Too Tumultuous Marriage. I gave this series a 9 out of 10, and it's completed at 56 chapters with a 3-chapter spin-off. This is a romance and drama series, but I want to give trigger warnings for kidnapping and attempted murder. In this series, our FL is a lawyer who's working to pay back the debt that she owes her shitty ex-boyfriend. She's currently working on a contract marriage between our ML and another woman, but that woman recently discovered that she was pregnant by the man that she loves, but there's a reason they can't be together. So she decides she can no longer go through with the contract marriage, and the ML needing to find a marriage partner and the FL needing money, they decide to enter the contract relationship together. So this series also follows the trope of a fake relationship becoming a real relationship. Now, RFL and ML are not complete strangers to each other. They went to college together, but were a few years apart. When our FL first visited the college, she ran into the ML there, and it was really cold, so she ended up wrapping her scarf around her neck, which is important because the ML cannot have anything touching his neck. When the ML was younger, he was kidnapped, and they attempted to unalive him. I'm a little bit vague on the details since it's been a while, but I believe they tied something around his neck, and they lit the building on fire. Around that time, the young FL was walking home and saw the building on fire and was actually the person who reported it. Because she called in this fire, the ML was able to be saved, but after having something on his neck and being in a near-death situation, he no longer could have anything touching his neck. So when the FL was able to tie a scarf around him, he knew something was different about her. Our FL and ML are such a good, wholesome couple. I obviously really enjoyed reading this since I gave it a 9 out of 10, and it's a very quick read since it is only 56 chapters. Now we're going to take a look at the series I dropped on Webtoon in 2023. Up first, we have the series Going Up. I gave this series a 5 out of 10, and personally dropped it after chapter 23. This is a romance and slice of life series that has a kind of Cinderella story element to it. Our FL is a dog walker who stumbles upon the opportunity to achieve her dreams of becoming a fashion designer. Now, I want to remind you that these are my opinions, so the reason I dropped this is my own personal preference. There wasn't anything wrong with this series per se, I just found it to be really boring, and I'm not a big fan of the art style. It also seemed that there wasn't any conflict to be resolved. Everything happened too easily. So I didn't care about the characters in this series. I didn't really like them, and again, I found it to be boring, and for those reasons, I ended up dropping the series. Another series on Webtoon that I dropped in 2023 is called I Don't Want to Go Back. I gave the series a 4 out of 10 and ended up dropping it after chapter 12, part 9, which on Webtoon is episode 60. This is a romance, drama, and GL or Yuri series, and I just found it to be really boring. In my mind, this series was really slow paced. There was no development that happened at all, even after 60 episodes. For this series as well, I wasn't a fan of the art style, and I noticed that that really takes me out of it at times, and if the story and plot is also not there, there's no reason for me to keep reading this. GL or Yuri series aren't that popular on Webtoon. There's not that many of them to find, or the ones that you do find haven't been updated in months or years. That's why I always try to give those series that I stumble across a shot, and this one just ended up being a shot that I didn't want to continue taking. If you do want to read a good GL or Yuri series, there's a couple that are ongoing that I would highly recommend, such as Not So Shoujo Love Story, which is in a high school setting, or if you want adults, I would really recommend Dom and More. The next series that I dropped on Webtoon is called Litterbox Comics. I gave this series a 5.2 out of 10 and dropped it at chapter 362. This is a slice of life series with kind of snapshots of the author's life imagined as animals. Because this series is just snapshots of the author's life, there's no real plot or development to have in mind, and one thing that I noticed after reading 362 chapters is a lot of those chapters were repeats or reposts. This is something I kept seeing over and over again, and while I do think the series is really cute and wholesome and like a really good iteration of their life, I don't want to see the same stuff I've already read. I want you to give me new things. For the reason of there being multiple repeated chapters and there being no development that ever happens, like the children aren't even aging up, I had to drop this series. Another series on Webtoon that I dropped is called The Prenup. I gave this series a 5.5 out of 10 and dropped it at chapter 71. This is a romance drama series, but I do want to give trigger warnings for bullying and suicide. I personally found the ML in this series to be really shitty, especially when it's revealed that not only does he have a contract relationship he's trying to pursue with our FL, he has it with another woman too. Since the beginning of this series, the FL has expressed no interest in the ML, in dating, in marriage, in anything of the sort, and she stays true true to that throughout the entirety of the series, maybe faltering here and there, being like, oh, I maybe could find the ML someone that I want to be with. One of the things that also made me drop this series, other than the fact that there was no development and I found this series to be extremely frustrating, were the people in the comments constantly shitting on and critiquing the FL for staying true to what she said in the first chapter, while our ML is fucking two-timing over here and being a little piece of shit. And the reason why the FL was bullied not only by everyone she thought was her friends that she went to college with, but now also her potential sister-in-law and sister-in-law's boyfriend, is because when she was in college, a boy confessed to her, said that he wanted to go out with her, and she said, oh no thank you, I'm not really looking to be in a relationship right now. Then that guy went and unalived himself. Let me just say this right now, let me be very clear. If you are in a relationship or someone wants to be in a relationship with you and they hold unaliving themselves over your head, get the fuck out. Run as far away as you possibly can. That is manipulation. You should not be with that person. That is a major red flag. So that in and of itself, the way that the FL is being treated because of someone else's own personal problems that they ended up blaming on her, and the fact that the ML was absolute shit and there was no development in his personality or his character, I had to drop this series. And the last series on Webtoon that I dropped in 2023 is called Mistake. I gave this series a 5.8 out of 10 and ended up dropping it at chapter 82. This is a drama romance series that involves shitty parents, shitty teachers, really just shitty everyone. I also want to give trigger warnings for this series for forced child marriage, revenge porn, and what I'm going to call rape because it was a minor coerced into sex by an adult. The plot of the story hinges on the fact that a minor was coerced into sex by an adult that was videotaped. It was spread as a type of revenge porn, but our FL and ML were the people who were named to be in the tape, even though it's very obvious based on appearance that it wasn't them. They are not in that type of relationship together, and people saw them studying, so there's literally no chance it could be them. But that does not matter. The fact that these children were kicked out of school, forced into marriage, and given absolutely no support, even though it was proven that they were not the kids in the video, it made me so frustrated. I'm now going to talk about the series that I read in 2023 on Tapas that I completed. Up first, we have Ayoung and Jaein, which is a spin-off series of Sora and Haena. I gave this series an 8.6 out of 10, and it was completed at 22 chapters. This is a romance, slice of life, coming of age, Yuri GL series. It very much has an opposite attracts trope to it, but in kind of a toxic way. Like, this is definitely an unhealthy relationship. There are also some mature scenes in this series, so if you are under the age of 18 or whatever the legal age of an adult is in your country, please wait to read this series. Up next, we have 4 Ways to Find a Wife, which I gave an 8.5 out of 10. This series is completed at 85 chapters and is a romance comedy drama series. We are also in a college setting, so there are some coming of age elements to this as well. There are definitely some power dynamics and family dynamics that are explored in this series. The FL's parents are no longer with them, so she's acting as the head of the family. Whereas the ML is struggling with family dynamics. There is a power struggle because his stepmom wants his half-brother to take over the family company. So right now he's just really struggling to prove his worth so that he can be the person to take over and do the work he wants to do. Up next, another series on Tapas that I completed in 2023 is One More Try. I gave this series a 9 out of 10 and it's completed at 108 chapters. This is a romance and slice of life series in an office place setting, but again, they're not in sales or marketing, they work in the jewelry industry. This series is a second chance romance that's very cliche, but it hits the cliches in a way that I like. It's not like overly tropey. The second chance romance also kind of follows a fake relationship to a real relationship because the first time they were together, it was a fake contract marriage, but towards the deadline, they both realized they had feelings for each other, but refused to say it. They took some time apart and then ended up back together when they were working together, which is where power dynamics come into play because the ML is now the CEO of the company that the FL is working at. As they work together and spend time together again, they realize that those feelings for each other never went away and they eventually enter into a real relationship. Another series I completed on Tapas is The Wicked Wife of the Scheming CEO. I gave this series a 6.5 out of 10 and it's completed at 65 chapters. This is a romance drama series, also in an office place setting. I'm not entirely sure what type of work they're doing though, so probably something like sales or marketing because that's the standard office place job that most of these manga or manhwa characters end up having. Both of them deal with shitty exes who cheated on them, and there's also some pretty shitty family dynamics for each of them. This series also follows the trope of a fake relationship turning into a real relationship, although I personally thought that the real relationship felt forced because there was a lack of chemistry between the two throughout the entire series. They just kind of said, we're in a real relationship now, and I was like, doesn't make sense, but okay. So although I ended up completing this series, this very easily could have been one I dropped if the plot was just a little bit worse. Up next, we have What Happens in Rio, which I gave a 7.6 out of 10. This series is completed at 58 chapters and is a romance series that follows the trope of one night stand turned new boss. That one night stand also resulted in a pregnancy, so we have that trope, but the FL does not try to run away from it. This series is very quick paced and fluffy. They are like on site in love with each other. There's no real build up to that. They just go from we hooked up to we are in a relationship and we are in love. Although I thought it was fine, it's not my favorite series that includes a one night stand turned boss pregnancy trope. If you were going to read anything that sounds like that, I would recommend the manhwa series Positively Yours. And the last series on tapas that I completed in 2023 is called Will You Be My Male Lead? I gave this series a 9 out of 10 and it's completed at 60 chapters. This is a romance comedy drama series and there are some mature scenes towards the end of the series, so again, keep that in mind if you are not an adult. In this series, our FL is an author and she uses the ML as a muse in order to get over her crush on her childhood friend. In her first book, which was successful, her childhood friend that she had a crush on was the male lead in that story, so she wants to find a new muse so that she can get over that crush and write another bestseller. However, it just so happens that her muse is the CEO of her publishing company. The ML is a bit older than her. He has a very stern, like cold expression. He also always looks exhausted, which I personally like. I like when the men look tired. And our FL is very daft. She's very dense. While she can write a romance, she doesn't understand when it's happening to her. She thinks that the ML acting as her muse is doing these things to help her write the book and not because he's actually flirting with her. Now, in 2023, I only dropped one series on tapas, and that series is My Boss is My Biggest Fan. I gave this series a 5.6 out of 10 and dropped it at chapter 66. This is a romance drama series that involves an FL with a double life. In her day-to-day life, the FL is an office worker, but she's very timid, she's a pushover, she's kind of a wallflower, just does what anyone wants her to do, but is kind of talked down upon by everyone in the office. And specifically the ML, who's like the leader of her team, constantly shits on her. But the FL is also an author who the ML is a huge fan of. She writes a web novel that her office decides to partner with in some of the work that they're doing. So although the ML is a huge fan of her as an author, he is an absolute fuckhead to her as an office worker, even though she's literally just doing her job. I really hate the ML in this series, and the second ML option is also gutter trash. So I wish the FL wouldn't have been with any of them. And because I think the ML is so shitty, I ended up dropping this. I couldn't put up with it anymore. My blood pressure was just rising every time I read a new chapter. And lastly, we have the physical series that I ended up completing in 2023. Up first, we have the Savior's Book Cafe Story in Another World, which I gave an 8.8 out of 10. This series is completed at 5 volumes and is a isekai ro-fan series. Our FL is 30 years old and she does not want to be the savior of this world. She gets transported to this world by a god and says, I don't want to do this. Luckily, another girl was also isekai'd over to be the savior, and the prince is immediately attracted to her. So RFL says, yeah, you take her. I'm just gonna go build this book cafe and use the magic that I've acquired to keep it in pristine condition. This series is very wholesome and has chill vibes, which I personally like because a lot of what I read physical series of are like dark fantasy, horror, thriller. So having softer, fluffy series like this is nice to have in the mix just to give my brain a rest. Another physical series I completed this year is Donuts Under a Crescent Moon. I gave this series a 7.8 out of 10 and it's completed at 4 volumes. This is a slice of life romance yuri series that takes place in an office setting. This series does also have asexual representation and addresses the idea of compulsive heterosexuality. While I did enjoy this series, I don't see myself going back to reread it, and since I had physical volumes of this copy, I am going to be looking to sell those to clear up space. And the last physical series that I completed in 2023 is Catch These Hands. I gave this series a 7 out of 10 and it is also completed at 4 volumes. Similar to Donuts Under a Crescent Moon, this is also a romance slice of life yuri GL series. However, instead of being in an office place setting, they are ex-delinquents. Another similarity between the two series is this series does also have asexual representation, and although I did really like it, I did not love it, and I do not see myself going back to reread it, and I have actually already sold my volumes of this series. Those are all of the series that I either completed or dropped in 2023. There are a few that I really like and will either go back and reread or have already done so, especially Daytime Star. I was such a big fan of that series. However, my goal in 2024 is to drop more series when I don't like them instead of making myself suffer through them. I am very much of the mind that I've already gotten this far in the series. I need to see it through and know how it ends, but I don't. I don't need to do that, and I don't need to put myself through that. So in 2024, if I don't like a series, I'm gonna drop it. If you have a favorite series that I didn't talk about here, it may be a series I'm already reading if it's ongoing, but always feel free to recommend your favorite series to me. I absolutely love reading and I'm always looking for more. That is all for today though, and I will see you next time.